The hills of northern England hide many things: abandoned mines, forgotten villages, even entire roads reclaimed by the forest. But few know about the ruins of St. Aurelia's Abbey, a medieval convent tucked away behind a thicket of black pines near the hamlet of Elderwick. There is no official record of St. Aurelia's Abbey in the church's archives, no mention in tourist brochures nor on maps. Only an old land deed, dated 1834, makes reference to a monastic retreat for contemplative silence and penance, closed by the Crown in 1641. The rest is silence. The story begins with Professor Alistair Wynne, a quiet historian from the University of York, who came across the abbey's name by accident while cataloguing a collection of medieval parchments purchased at an estate auction. One fragment caught his attention. It was written in Latin, faded with age, but the heading chilled him. Exorcismus de Silentio, the exorcism of silence. The manuscript mentioned girls with hollow voices, bells that rang on their own, and an ominous phrase repeated thrice. She walks before the altar, but she has no face. At first, Alistair dismissed it as monastic poetry, until he noticed the accompanying hand-drawn map. It marked a route from Elderwick's old mill into the woods, and something was etched in the corner in shaky handwriting. Leave no offerings. She remembers. Against his better judgment, Alistair made the trip. He found the ruins just as described: stone archways crumbling under moss, a half-collapsed bell tower, and a sealed iron gate leading to the underground crypts. But the strangest part: the bells. There was no wind that day, no bird song, and yet from deep inside the abbey's ruins, Alistair heard a single bell chime, clear, cold, and wrong. He never returned to the university. His notes were mailed anonymously to the history department, bundled in a rain day, maged envelope with a short final entry: "I think they buried something down there, not to hide it, but to keep it asleep." When Professor Alistair Wynne disappeared, his colleagues assumed he had taken a sabbatical. Only one person questioned the strange package that arrived after he vanished: Mira Shaw, his research assistant. Mira wasn't easily frightened. She had worked with Alistair for 3 years, often cataloguing grim relics, plague burial maps, execution records, exorcism rites. But the folder marked St. Aurelia disturbed her more than anything she'd ever seen. Inside were photos, fragments of frescoes, stone carvings, and half-translated Latin texts. One photo, in particular, showed a decaying wall painting from the abbey's crypt. It depicted a group of nuns kneeling before a figure cloaked in red, her face blurred or scratched out, as though intentionally removed. But it was the second fresco that made Mira freeze. It showed a choir of young girls, their mouths open in song or screams. Their eyes were dark, inked over. Above them, written in crumbling Gothic Latin, was a warning: their voices are no longer theirs. Mira began cross-referencing the names from the abbey's remaining records. Tattered vellum pages Alistair had scanned. She discovered that in 1617, 12 girls between the ages of 8 and 14 had been brought to the abbey. The documents list them as choir novices. Oddly, the records stop there. No mention of their departure, no death certificates, no transfers, just silence. Mira grew obsessed. She travelled to Elderwick herself, drawn by the same pull that led Alistair there. The townspeople were tight-lipped. An old woman at the local shop said only this: "They say the trees don't grow right near the abbey. Animals won't go near it. Some nights you can hear humming, high, girlish humming, like a music box with broken teeth." Ignoring the warnings, Mira entered the ruins. She found the choir chamber beneath the nave. There were still 12 wooden seats, rotting but intact, arranged in a crescent around a crumbling altar. Carved into each seat was a name, and in one of them, fresh fingernail scratches. Something else lay there too, a child's ribbon, modern, clean, untouched by time. She turned to leave but stopped. From behind the altar, where shadow and stone met, a voice, soft, fractured, childlike, began to hum an old liturgical melody. It was off-key, and there were 12 voices. Mira Shaw never filed a report. She never uploaded her notes, nor contacted the university. After returning from St. Aurelia's ruins, she checked into a small inn near Elderwick and didn't leave her room for 3 days. The innkeeper, Mrs. Darnell, said she looked haunted. Mira spoke little, ate less, and every night she left the bathroom light on. She clutched a red ribbon in her hand until her knuckles bled. On the 4th morning, she left a package at the post office, sealed with wax and addressed to the Archdiocese of Canterbury. Inside was a flash drive, a handwritten account, and something stranger, an audio recording labeled only Choir 0213 AM. What the church did with that package is unknown, but someone within their archives leaked portions of the manuscript Mira had transcribed. That is how fragments of her report survived. She wrote that beneath the choir chamber, a hidden stone stairwell led to a lower sanctum, sealed in lead and Latin wards. The air was thick with mildew and something fouler, old incense and rot. The walls were covered in writing, not carved, scratched, and all in the same message. Don't open the veil, she still listens. At the center of the sanctum was an altar, not the kind used for worship, but for containment. Beneath it was a pit lined with bones, child-sized, fused together by centuries of pressure and heat. But not all the bones were old. Mira found remains no more than a decade gone. And there, placed like a relic, lay a face mask, smooth, white porcelain, eyeless, mouthless, just like in the fresco. She recorded what she could, and then she fled. Her last written words, scrawled in panic across the bottom of the report, read, "It was never a convent, it was a prison. And the hymns were not prayers, they were seals. Something lives beneath St. Aurelia, something that wears a girl's face, and she wants a new choir." Mira vanished 2 weeks later. Her hotel room was found intact, her laptop open, a file playing on repeat, a recording of 12 young voices humming in harmony, until one voice joined in 13th. 5 months after Mira Shaw vanished, a manila envelope arrived at the office of the Ecclesiastical Archives in Canterbury. It was unmarked, no return address, no postage. Inside was a single typed letter, unsigned, written on yellowing paper. The letter was never meant to be public, but one junior archivist, known only as EL, leaked it anonymously online. Its contents, though dismissed by the church as pure fiction, caused unease among those who had studied St. Aurelia's history. This is what it said: "To whom it may concern, you do not know me, and after this letter, I will ensure you never do. I worked in the restricted section of the archives for 12 years. I have seen things, documents, recordings, relics that should never be touched, let alone stored, but I never feared them until I read Mira Shaw's file. The manuscript she sent was buried the same day it arrived, not metaphorically, literally, burned, then buried under the direction of the diocesan exorcist. But the recording she included, that we were required to listen to. The first minute is faint humming, then a voice, not a child's, not an adult's, something in between. It whispers 3 Latin words repeatedly: aperi, audi, accede. Open, listen, come. One of the senior archivists, Father Wren, spoke fluent Latin. He tried to translate it aloud. He didn't finish the 3rd word. His nose began bleeding and he collapsed. He died 3 days later, an aneurysm. His final note, scribbled during his lucid moments in the hospital, read, "I saw a chapel, but upside down. No windows, just mouths. 3 days ago, I began hearing humming in my sleep. Not dreams, recordings. There's no music in my home, no children nearby, but I hear it still. Last night, I opened the old St. Aurelia file again. Inside was something new, a photo I never placed there, black and white, faded. It shows a class of young girls in uniform standing in front of a chapel. 11 of them smile, but one in the center. She's looking directly at me. Her face is too clear, too detailed, and behind her eyes, something watches. I'm leaving tonight. I don't care where. I will not sleep near churches. I will not listen to bells. If you find this letter, destroy it. If you've read it, do not seek her name." The seal is cracking. She remembers the choir, and now she's listening for yours. Okay, so tonight's story is different. I didn't write this episode. In fact, I wasn't even planning to post anything. This came in the mail, not email, physical mail, like old school wax-sealed envelope stuff. The return address just said, Elderwick. Yeah, that Elderwick. Inside was a USB drive with a note, play only once, destroy after. I know, it sounds fake, but I played it, and what I heard messed me up. I've cleaned it up, boosted the audio. There's a chant, really soft. Then the voice of a woman, tired, raspy, but urgent. She says, if you are hearing this, you've already started the pattern. She doesn't need churches anymore, just voices, just attention. Then silence. No static, no signal, just, breathing. Host. I tried to track down where this came from. There's a thread, online, obscure forums, people talking about the 13th voice, the choir that never ends, even something called the Saint Aurelia effect. Most of it's wild conspiracy stuff. But here's where it gets real. Someone emailed me anonymously and said, stop saying her name. Every time it's spoken, she learns, not remembers, learns. She's building herself again. I thought it was a prank, but now things are getting weird. My podcast equipment, it turns on by itself. A file titled choir13.wav keeps reappearing on my hard drive. I delete it. It comes back. And last night, I played the raw file again just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. There were 12 voices, then halfway through, a 13th joined in. It was my voice. Long pause in audio. Host. Whispering. I've recorded over 90 episodes of horror stories. Haunted dolls, possessed churches, demonic priests, you name it. But this one's different. Because it's not finished. I'm ending this podcast after tonight. If you're hearing this, delete it. And if you ever visit a chapel and you hear a choir with no choir in sight, don't stay. Don't listen. Because the moment you do, you've been counted. They found Jay Fenley, the podcast host, 3 days after his final broadcast. He was seated upright in his home studio, headphones still on, eyes wide open. There were no signs of struggle, no injury, no cause of death the coroner could confirm. But his mouth was open, unnaturally wide, stretched. And from inside, when the examiner shone a light down his throat, something glimmered. A small, cracked piece of white porcelain, smooth, cold, eyeless. His computer screen displayed a frozen waveform. The file name, Saint Aurelia Choir, full WAV. Duration, 1313. Playback, looping, no one could stop it. Later, authorities investigating the podcast's fanbase reported something odd. Of the thousands who listened to the final episode, exactly 12 had vanished in the following month. Different countries, different ages, all gone without trace. But each had one thing in common. They'd left behind audio logs, recordings, messages, and in the background of each file, a faint melody, a distant hum, and 13 voices perfectly in tune. That's the end of the story, unless you've been listening too closely, in which case, wait for end next part. Thanks for watching.